Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctor as he travels the Vortex and arrive at episode number 351. And this podcast merely enables us to be wrong with authority. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How are you guys?
Very good.
Good.
Excellent. Now you used the same open that I thought of earlier in the week and forgot to tell you about when I got here.
Apparently our minds are in sync. That might be scary.
Apparently so.
So does that mean you're both wrong with authority?
Always. You guys have a good week?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
It was a good...
It was a week.
Long... I had Katrina on Saturday. Mel's at a conference in St. Louis. Should be on her way home now. And so I had Katrina, and she wore Papa out. God, what did we do? We played video games and went to Sam's and had pizza and did some early Christmas shopping. Well, not really shopping. We did some Christmas looking. As in, she ran into the toy aisle and said, I want this, this, and this. And Papa made notes. And
Christmas browsing.
Yeah, Christmas browsing, yeah. Went to the park and played for like 2.5 hours. We went home and had taquitos and nachos, which she'd never had a taquito before, so she wanted the recipe so she could take it home to her parents. I just gave her the box. I said, here, I worked really hard on this, let me tell you. We watched Ernest Scared Stupid.
What'd you think of that?
She sat with her hands over her eyes and really tried not to pay attention to it because the troll was scary. And I'm like, really? And then,
it's not just Sarah.
Well, as I watched it, I realized I don't think I'd ever seen it.
Really?
Like, I don't remember any of this movie. I remember there was a troll movie with Ernest, but that's about it. Like, I thought he was green, and, he wasn't. He was brown, and everything was cool. I'm going to cross this one off my list, because apparently I've never seen it.
Add it to the list and cross it off.
I got a Halloween movie knocked out this week.
I saw your post about that and thought, yep, that's a Sean Halloween movie.
And then, I didn't post it, but we watched Toy Story. What's the Toy Story of Terror? The little short, which is still one of the greatest things ever. Yeah. But I've seen it like 100 times now. Today we got up and we went and met with my mom and had chocolate chip pancakes for breakfast. She had just had a great time. And then I dropped her off, and then I picked up Shy from Jesse's house. Then I had the wee one the rest of the day. I'm exhausted. Just flat out exhausted. To the point where I'm considering calling into work tomorrow, just being like, no, you have to go on without me. I can't do it.
Sounds like a good weekend.
What'd you do, Glenn? You did everything.
I did lots of stuff this week, but I can't remember half of it.
Well,
I watched a bunch of stuff.
Let's start with your Halloween challenge, which
I was going to start with...
I'm so proud of you.
I watched the 2 episodes of Inhumans this week, which maybe that was last week, and I just forgot to add it.
No, you mentioned last week that you hadn't seen it yet.
Yeah, okay.
Because we hadn't watched it either.
I watched the 2 episodes of the Inhumans, which I think is a pretty good start to the series. It does lack in effects, which I kind of expected going in. And it was nothing like the graphic novel collection that I read for Sonic Youth. So they're actually borrowing some ideas and some parallels, but this story is actually more interesting and compelling. I watched The Gifted, the first episode of The Gifted.
That was fantastic.
Wow, that was amazing. Yeah, really, really liked it. No, I started, as I mentioned last week, I started my October movie challenge, which, again, thanks to Adam for posting the picture and idea to me. So, just in case anybody didn't hear last year, the gist of it is there's 31 days of things you're supposed to do for Halloween, or for October horror films. And the first one was 1920s to 30s, and so I watched an old film, 1932's The Monster Walks. It was pretty decent. It was good. There's not a lot of horror to it. It's more of a thriller, more of a terror, because there's no supernatural element to it. But it was good. Then for day 2 is 1940s to 50s. I watched The Double Bat, which has Bela Lugosi in it.
Oh.
And he plays a mad scientist that's working for a cosmetic company, and he seeks revenge.
No.
He seeks revenge on his employers because, without them knowing, he's working for them. But he creates these giant bats to attack the family and take out the members because they're making money off of his inventions. 60s to 70s, I watched The City of the Dead. The Brits might recognize that. It's actually called Horror Hotel when it was released here in the U.S. And it has Christopher Lee in it, in a somewhat minor role. He's not in it a lot. He's in it at the beginning. He's in it towards the end, quite a bit at the end.
Is that a Hammer film?
It's not a Hammer film, but I think it might have been American International, which was, they did high Hammer style films, but released in the U.S. Interesting thing is, it's a British film. It was completely filmed in Britain. All of the actors are British, but everybody was used American accents because it's set in Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
So everybody had an American accent. And it's about a town that this girl goes to because she's studying witchcraft. She's not studying to be a witch. That's like her senior thesis, history of witches and witchcraft and stuff. So she goes to this town on the advice of Christopher Lee's character because he's her professor in school. And she goes there to study further and falls into occultic witchcraft there. It wasn't a great film. There's some good acting in it, but it's a bit boring at times. Not a lot going on. And for the 1980s to 90s, I did Ghoulies. That was for day 4, which I thought I had seen and watched the whole film. Didn't remember a dang thing about it. So it was kind of like Scared Stupid. I went... And that was what I kind of set out to do, is to watch films in this challenge that I hadn't seen in a long time. And I thought, okay, Ghoulies, I haven't seen that in a long time. And I listened to another podcast called the Purple Stuff Podcast, and they do almost kitschy 1980s horror and sci-fi and kind of stuff like that, pop culture stuff. And he had talked about the Ghoulies on there, and it piqued my interest because I thought, I think I've seen that. I watched it. It's not a good movie at all, but it's so campy and fun. I mean, it's not even fun. It's just campy and fun to watch, that I got out of it what I think you're supposed to get out of it for a 1980s horror film.
Ernest Scared Stupid, same.
Which I think, with the troll in it, it could have been my horror comedy, I suppose. Anyway, so...
8 bumper with booger lips.
Number 5, 2000 to 2010, I did The Ring, because I had never seen The Ring before.
So the Ring, not Ringu.
No, not Ringu, just The Ring. Yeah, I did The Ring.
I wasn't sure if it was the American or not.
And Caitlin watched that one with me. Good concept, but there's some questionable delivery on the connection of it, how it works. Just didn't seem to be fulfilling, or I'm hoping that The Ring 2 maybe fills out a little bit about how the girl was actually able to do this kind of stuff, because that's not there. It's just all kind of left as this mystery of how she was doing all this. Anyway, so it's entertaining. I'll give it that. And I know why it's such a pop culture thing, because there are a lot of unusual and unique ideas about it, and it's genuinely spooky. I mean, there's a lot of spooky points of it. And then on Friday, I did, for a movie release this year, I did The Mummy with Tom Cruise. It's a good start to the Dark Universe. Unfortunately, I keep looking at that 14% rating it got on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think is unjustified.
I think so too.
And that concerns me, because I felt like it was a pretty decent start. The surprise of who Russell Crowe is wow, yay. It's fun. It's a fun film. It's a good popcorn flick. I wanted it to be like Iron Man, to be the big jumping off point. I want it to be like Godzilla, the big jumping off point for. It's not. It establishes some baselines.
You don't have to construct a shared universe, I think, is where everybody's rushing to get to that. It's all got to tie in. It's like, you could do. They're all monsters. That's your tie-in.
That's all you need.
That's all you need.
That's all they did back then. I mean, you don't have to be more elaborate than that.
Then on Saturday for book 2 movie adaptation, Caitlin and I went to the theater and saw It.
How was the new It?
Really good. Actually, we saw the first half of the book, It. Which
you saw chapter 1.
Didn't know. Yeah, we saw It chapter 1. I didn't know they were only doing half the book. It wasn't until we got probably about 2/3 of the way through the film I went, this isn't going to end where I think it's going to end.
Where are the adults at?
Well, and then when that realization hit me, I thought, this is genius. This is how you split a book into 2 films right here. You pick a book that's literally 2 different books.
Yeah.
That was cool. And man, okay, I've been watching horror movies for years, so it really takes a lot for a horror movie to creep me out or to make me jump even. And this one's creepy, and it made me jump. And I don't care what anybody says about this Pennywise. He's great. This guy really pulls off the creeps. Now, I love Tim Curry in the
From what
first
I've
one.
heard that
Don't get me wrong.
what
He's
he does
wonderful.
with this new one is perfect for the actual
Exactly.
film. And
That's
it takes
exactly
you a little
what
bit
it
to
is.
warm up to realize what they're going to do, and you're
Well,
initially put off by him at first because it's not Tim Curry.
That's the thing is they start us with that iconic beginning of the original TV series where Georgie has lost the boat. It's down in the sewer drain, and Pennywise is standing there looking out eye level. And the only reason I think that's appropriate because the book cover I had was nearly that, except for it was the boat, the drain, and then I think you saw the hand.
Yeah.
You didn't see
Yeah.
the clown,
Yeah.
you saw the hand. So, but that was nearly perfect to me because I thought I really liked the way they did it in the TV miniseries, and they did that there. And then once you, even from that get go, when he starts performing it, you realize this is a different type of Pennywise. And I was just captivated by the actor that did this. It was fantastic. It's well directed. All of the kids are wonderful. They do a fantastic job. It's genuinely creepy. I can't tell you how close it is to the book because I read the book literally 30 years ago and haven't read it since. Most of what I remembered from it was from the television miniseries because I had seen that more recent than I did the book. But from what I do remember of the book, there's a good chunk of it there. And then the last thing I did was for horror comedy, which was today's. I did Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
And
Yeah,
there
I
it
knew it
is.
was kind of beginning.
Yeah,
You weren't a big fan of Slither, so
Yeah, it was. It's mildly amusing. It's fun. It's the I think the biggest problem I had with it is I went into it with the mentality of it being a horror film, and it's more just
it's an accidental slasher film.
It's an accident. That's the problem with it. It's an accidental slasher film, and from that perspective, it's when you go into a horror film and you have a motivational evil, the graphic violence is acceptable because the evil is what's portraying the violence. When it all becomes an accidental parody of that kind of thing, the violence then elevates to an unnecessary level for me, and that's what it was. I'm surprised I've made it 8 days into this challenge.
Yeah, you've been doing great.
It was like at the beginning of this, I thought, "Oh, this isn't going to go well."
Let me tell you, I am not kidding when I say how proud I am of either of this because you mentioned it last week and you were genuinely kind of excited by it, but then you were having that worried, I'll probably get a couple days into it and give up, especially starting with, the aughts.
Yeah,
that's kind of a
that's
a
wasn't
challenge
that
there.
far back. It was 20s to 30s, but
that could be a challenge there and a little off-putting to people.
for most people, not for
Not
me.
not for
I was actually I was reveling in the fact that we're starting in an area that I love.
So as the updates came out and they kept coming, and every day there was I was like, hey, well, he's really kind of chucking along with this. And then I thought, well, when we get to the current stuff, when we get to a movie release this year or the horror comic, that's where he's going to kind of drop the ball. And then he didn't, and he kept going. And then I went, wow, Glenn's good. I haven't even posted my Halloween pictures yet for the pictures, and I plan on doing that one. This one I kind of knew I wasn't going to get to it.
Here's the thing: that was the other thing I had kind of planned this first week around going and seeing it with Caitlin, and it wasn't until I got halfway through the week that I realized I was going to do it for film release this year, and I actually got up to Thursday and realized, oh wait a minute, that's on a Friday. I was like, I can't do it for my release this year, and so I went to my list and I looked and I realized, oh, on the 7th, which is the day that we could go, is a book to movie adaptation. I thought, well, this works. So
I'm very proud that you're sticking with it.
Yeah.
As I said,
well, let's see
here
how
we
this
are
week
8 days into the
let's
month.
see how
and
this
I still
week
have yet
goes.
to post a photo for my Halloween challenge.
Let's see how this week goes.
Keith, what did you do this week?
I watched John Wick 2.
And
It was okay. I
better than the first one?
aspects of it. So I think the action in the first film was better,
I'd agree with that.
but I like the story of this one better, and the world building in this one is a lot better. Because while these films, they have great action and quite a bit of it, there is still a lot of it not action. It's him getting ready, it's him doing whatever, and then long action scene, and then back to doing whatever. So for that aspect of it, I like this one better because it had all of those. The in-between action was more interesting to me.
Gotcha. I can't wait for they're doing a third one. So
I'm
excited.
I'm a bit more excited now for the third one, having enjoyed the second one a bit more. And then I finished Defenders, which was pretty good. I thought not as great as it could have been.
I agree.
But some of it kind of justifies some of the stuff in Iron Fist.
That's what I was saying. It's exactly what I was saying.
And it's small stuff in Iron Fist. It's nothing about his character or the main plot of Iron Fist.
Do you agree,
but
though,
it's important why Iron Fist comes first.
Yes, agreed. But do you also agree that it makes Danny Rand a lot more tolerable?
Yeah, it does.
The series makes it a lot more tolerable. And I mean, a lot of the reason why they did Iron Fist first makes total sense.
Oh, yeah, you had to do it. I kind of wish...
Don't skip Iron Fist.
Yeah, don't skip Iron Fist.
If you don't like it, just keep plotting through it and get done, because there are plot elements to Defenders, which is a much better series.
Huge plot elements.
How do you guys feel about...
I thought you said elephants.
Huge plot
Plot
elephants.
elephants. Don't forget to look for the elephants.
I like that. I'm going to start using plot elephant.
Considering the ribs.
Oh, yeah.
Without saying too much about the ending, I kind of wish I felt they pulled their punches a little bit too much. I feel like that's not the end of the hand. It's obviously not the end of the hand. I kind of wished it was, because I think the hand has kind of run its course, and I kind of want them to do something different.
And after doing over 4 series.
The hand wound up kind of falling flat for me a little bit. And then the fact of what they did with Matt at the end of the season, I knew the outcome of that.
Well, I sort
when
of
it happened.
Yeah.
They had announced season 3, so you know nothing's...
Oh, I hadn't even seen the season 3 announcement.
I think they announced that after season 2.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, that's
right.
Yeah,
No,
it's just kind of frustrating.
Cliffhanger.
I agree.
What?
It's an empty cliffhanger?
Well,
no, because they resolve it before the end.
But it takes the emotional punch out of it.
It does take the emotional punch out of it.
The only other thing I did this week is I've started making Sarah watch Stranger Things, because she didn't watch season 1. So we're rewatching that so we can get ready for season 2.
And how's she handling it?
Good. She's fine with it. It's pretty much all I did this week. Gemma has a tooth that's already broke through the surface a little bit.
Already.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to news then. Not very surprising, the Doctor Who Christmas special is going to be in U.S. cinemas. That's kind of the going trend. In other news, Big Finish announced a new countermeasure season, Series 2. So I guess they're not as far in the new countermeasures as far as I thought. What makes this one extra special? It features the Yeti and the Great Intelligence, with a story written by Andy Frankenbaum.
Oh,
that was a drum roll. He just took forever to get to it.
Sound like a helicopter flying from a far distance.
The fourth story in the box set of the four adventures, written Time of the Intelligence by Andy Frankenbaum.
Yay!
So those who don't know,
so he's the season finale.
He is the season finale.
Ooh.
Countermeasures is the team from Remembrance of the Daleks, featuring Gilmore.
Chunky
Gilmore.
Chunky Gilmore. So apparently Big Finish did previous adventures of Countermeasures, and these are the new adventures of Countermeasures.
Yeah, they did a set that I think took place in the 1960s. The first 4 series, I think, took place in the 1960s.
And so this brings it up to modern day, I think.
Yeah, the new series.
So it's partially in the 50th anniversary of the Abominable Snowman. Part of why they're putting this out.
That's pretty cool.
That is so cool.
Really cool.
Congrats, Andy. And we'll get those on the schedule
eventually.
Well, we're putting Countermeasures, the first series, on in January, and then in February when this comes out.
December.
Is it December when this comes
December.
out? So we're going to put it on the schedule for December, and for the first Countermeasures, and then in January after this year we'll have the new Countermeasure series on. Yep. I don't know. Somebody's got to do the schedule because it's not up past next week. I have no idea what we're doing after time, Eddie. So.
I know, isn't it exciting? The tension is terrible. I hope it'll last. Maybe I'll call in sick tomorrow and do a schedule. I'm making all these jokes about calling in sick, and at this point, I may just follow through with it. It may not even be a threat. I'm not going to be there.
It's no longer a threat. It's a promise.
Of course, then you guys will ask me, so where's the schedule? It's like, I slept.
Tune back in next week to see if Sean actually took the day off.
Make a note to make sure to ask.
Isn't it awesome that I can make these jokes because nobody at work listens to the show?
That was an interesting thing that happened to me this week. So I'm at work, and there's this girl who's an editor for us, and she's been with us for nearly like 8 or 9 months, almost a year. She's just taking on another job and leaving in a few weeks, but she's been around for like 9 months, and she's sitting there, and she's an editor and she's a director sometimes. She's been directing this week because one of our directors is off, and so she's sitting in the back there with me, and she goes, "How long have you been doing your podcast?" I said, "Oh, I don't know. I think we're coming up on 7 years or something like that." She goes, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And so in my head, I'm thinking somebody must have told her, or she must have come, across recently, or she just. I said, "Oh, have you recently listened to this show?" And she goes, "No, I used to listen to it a long time ago when I worked at JCPenney's." I was like, "Really?" She said, "Yeah, it was like 2 or 3 years ago." She said, "We were into Doctor Who. A bunch of girls at work and I used to watch, Doctor Who, and then we'd listen to Traveling the Vortex."
What?
I said, "What?" I said, "You don't listen anymore?" She says, "Well, I don't." She says, "I haven't watched Doctor Who much lately, and I don't hang out with these girls anymore that we chat. But that was our thing, is we would watch Doctor Who, we'd listen to the show, and then we'd talk about the show you guys recorded." And I said, "Are you kidding me?"
We were an After Who show?
We were an After Who show. They would listen to us when, yeah.
And then there'd be discussion
and
about
they would
our discussion.
They weren't talking about Doctor Who. They were talking about our show. That's here in town at this JCPenney's. There's girls that were listening to our show.
We have
Wow.
groupies?
It blew me away. I don't know that they're groupies, but there were girls listening to the show here, and I was like, wow, that's...
I'm pretty sure the definition of groupie is girl who listens to your show, but, I'll let it slide.
No, I'm pretty sure that there's more to a groupie than that, but usually they group around. They're not hanging outside the door waiting for us to leave, so... no, it's
Well, they can't because somebody put the Google address in wrong.
Oh, we don't even meet where the Google address is near. So yeah,
That was a cheap shot, Glenn. I'm sorry.
I was like, wow, this is how bizarre. She's been there for 9 months, and she finally tells me before she's leaving, "Hey, well, how long you been doing the podcast?" What?
Wow.
Well, welcome, ladies. if
Chelsea and the
still out
girls
there.
at JCPenney's.
Oh, I
don't know
remember
their
Chelsea.
names, but was Chelsea there when you were there?
Yeah, she was
Oh,
filling
okay.
in part-time when Dave
Okay,
was
that's
sick.
right. Yeah. Yeah, she listens to the show. Not anymore, but she listens.
She used to.
She used to listen to the show.
Hopefully the JCPenney ladies still
I hope they
listen.
are too. That was crazy. I was like,
Wow.
I rarely run into anybody I don't already know that listens to the show.
Yeah.
In Topeka, I don't run into anybody else anywhere else either because we don't live there. But
Thanks for that.
that was obvious, wasn't it?
So, okay, does this beg the question then? Do we really need to get serious about putting together a Doctor Who meet and greet here in town?
We probably do.
Yeah,
I've been waiting for you to do it.
Why is that my responsibility?
We tasked Chris with the job.
Oh, that's
Oh,
right.
that's right, we
We
did,
did task
didn't we?
Chris with the job. That's right.
Chris, how you coming on that, buddy?
It's enough for me to get together here once a week to talk about Doctor Who.
I might be off tomorrow if you need some help.
Of course, by the time this show goes out, it'll be too late.
That's the beauty of it.
Oh, okay. So our last bit of news. Unfortunately, Sylvester McCoy had to cancel his appearance at Time Eddy this year.
Aww.
Aw.
Don't worry, they're still going to put on a fantastic show.
Yes, they are.
Yep. There's still a lot of great guests. Katie
And
Manning,
he had
Matthew
great
Waterhouse.
reasons for canceling. He had a work commitment.
Yeah.
And not just any work commitment.
A work commitment Sean's very excited
I'm
about.
very excited about his work commitment. And I'm going to make you go look it up. We should do that. We should do a scavenger hunt where we make references to things but don't explain them. And then at the end of the show, we'll say, if you found all of the things that we talked about, let us know and you win a prize.
No. Because if I listened to a podcast that made me do work, I don't think I'd listen to that podcast anymore.
What if you were on a podcast that made you do work?
I'm already on a podcast that makes me do work.
'Cause that's kind of where I'm at.
That's it for news.
Even Billy, he says, "What are you doing today?" I was like, "I got to get this show. I got to watch this thing. I got to watch some Doctor Who." He says, "Oh, okay." He says, "I'll watch with you." He says, "Which one is it?" And I said, "Well, it's one of the lost ones." He goes, "Pictures?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay. How many parts?" 6.
But only 4 of those parts is pictures.
Well, that's why I didn't know that at the time, so I was really glad. I was like, "Oh, this one's like."
You do get kind of excited when you get to that episode.
I'm real excited.
Yeah.
My first clue was the corners weren't rounded anymore. I was like, "Oh, the corners aren't rounded. Is it?" Because I knew there were some that were.
I didn't realize it either.
Yeah.
Well, let's finish up
Sorry.
news here. No, that's all right.
Well, that's it for news. So let's go on to pledge drive results.
Pledge drive results from this week. We actually had some people that became patron or raised their pledge amounts for the show, and we appreciate that very much. We're going to read those out on the show. Rachel upped her pledge. Chrissy upped her pledge. Trevor, new Patreon subscriber.
Welcome, Trevor. Thank
we
you.
hadn't heard of Trevor. Maybe he's been listening. Maybe he listened with the girls at JCPenney's. I don't know, but he pledged to our show. We appreciate that. Brittany also upped her pledge, and then Kurt, who had he did have a little issue with Patreon accidentally, but he's got that resolved, and he made a pledge, upped his pledge for the show as well. So we thank you very much.
I don't know if you can see this, but on the thermometer, we went from here to here. So thank you very much for that.
If we had not done that show live on Facebook that week, we could have got away with holding up something that really wasn't a thermometer and saying we could have said, our big patron sign in the back. Heck, we could have had people on phone banks on a podcast that wasn't broadcast on Facebook Live. So.
But we did have them.
They were just behind the curtain.
They were behind the curtain.
So, yes, thank you, everybody.
Which was poor planning on my part. I probably should have put them in front of the curtain.
Thank you, everybody who are supporting us on there. Those of you that continue to support us, because there are a lot of people that continue to support that we did not read out. We appreciate all that you do for us as well, and your pledges as well. And we do want to take this moment to remind you that if you would like to contribute to the show, become a patron of Traveling the Vortex, go to our website, travelingthevortex.com. On the right-hand side of the page, there is a button. It'll take you right to Patreon. Click on that button, and you can pledge to the show there as well. Or not as well. That's where you go. There's no other place to pledge to the show wholly, but so do that if you can, and we appreciate it.
Unless you really want to slip an envelope full of unmarked bills under the door of the men's room, I'll send you an address.
What's
another way
next?
they can
What's
donate to the show.
what's next in the?
Up next is feedback. You got that one, Sean?
No.
We've got.
Did we have feedback this
We've got
week?
Chrissy.
Oh, that's right. Chrissy did write feedback. I did not read Chrissy's feedback, but I saw that it came in. Chrissy writes, Space Rodents. Dear Vortex Boys, first off, your Pledge Drive episode was a lot of fun. It was great to see the inner workings of a Traveling the Vortex recording session. I wouldn't mind seeing more of these on Facebook Live. Not every week, mind you, otherwise they lose their specialness, but every once in a while could be good. Well, I don't have Britbox, so I didn't get to watch the recon of The Wheel in Space. I don't have any audio versions either, but I do have a digital copy of the novelization, so I did read that. And it was interesting experiencing the story with the book first. I only had a cursory knowledge of what happens in the story before I read it. Zoe joins Team TARDIS, Cybermen are involved, etc. But that's it. The book is my first full and proper introduction to this particular story. This is a basic Second Doctor base under siege story, but I think what gives it its charm is the details, especially with the characters and the setting. Maybe all these little details are only in the novelization and not necessarily in the televised story, but that fact is just yet another reason to read the novels as well as watch the TV stories. They add an extra dimension to the story because, Doctor Who fans totally need more material to consume, in sarcasm. Here are some things I liked about this book. The TARDIS tempts the Doctor and Jamie to leave when they arrive, but the Doctor just ignores it like he always does. The robots on the rocket encounter the TARDIS and sense that it is impossible, and end up dismissing its presence. Since it was impossible, it could not have happened, so it was not a problem. I love that little aside. Quote, meanwhile, outside the wheel, A string of silvery bubbles drifted onto the outer skin and then disappeared, somehow seeming to pass through the metal. I'd be curious to see how the TV episode managed to portray that effect, how it looked. Fingers crossed that this story shows up in a broom closet in a Nigerian TV studio or
Yeah,
something.
because we'd be curious to see how that happened too, because it doesn't come across until it snaps very well.
Not quite.
Zoe was a librarian on the wheel. That makes me ridiculously happy. Chapter 8 is called The First Death. Thanks for spoiling it, chapter title. I had that same thought myself when I got to that chapter, Chrissy, and then I stopped and went, well, it was bound to happen eventually. I guess we're just to that point in the story. Cybermats are called space rodents, so there's my feedback title. Jamie spoiling Zoe's recording. Absolutely adorable. These two are already clicking. The Doctor's interaction with... Is it Gemma or Gemma?
It's Gemma.
It's Gemma. You would think I would know this.
It's the British spelling.
Yeah.
Spelled it the American way.
His concern for her when she said her husband had died. The second Doctor always seemed to care about people as individuals in his adventures, thinking of his conversation with Victoria in Tomb of the Cybermen. Zoe crawling into the TARDIS in order to avoid the Doctor noticing her before they leave speaks volumes about her character. Not just that she's a super brainy girl from the future, but that she feels she has to be sneaky. It's like she feels guilty for leaving her duties on the wheel, but she wants an even bigger adventure with the Doctor. Yes, I gleaned all of that about Zoe from one small scene at the end. These are my small, random, and somewhat disjointed thoughts on this, but I enjoyed reading this book. It was a quick read and a lot of fun. And now The Wheel in Space is further up on my list of lost episodes that I'd like to see found. I'll close up here. Hope you all have a great week. Talk to you later. Chrissy.
Thank you, Chrissy.
Thank you, Chrissy.
And of course, don't forget you can send us feedback by going to our website. While you're there donating to Patreon, you can just click on the Send Us Feedback tab and fill out that form, or you can send it directly to feedback@travelingthevortex.com. Let's move on to our review. The Wheel in Space. When the TARDIS rematerializes inside a rocket, the Doctor and Jamie are alarmed by the presence of a hostile servo robot. They discover that the rocket is drifting in the orbit of a giant space station, the Wheel in Space. Once inside this magnificent spaceship, they are bewildered by its complexity and sheer size. The technicians and programmers are highly trained, but who are they working for? Suspecting the worst, the Doctor is still horrified to find the deadly Cybermen in control. What evil plan are they plotting? Who or what are the Cybermats? Can the Doctor trust anyone on board to help him stop the wheel as it spins relentlessly through space?
Bum, bum, bum.
That is a very misleading synopsis.
Yeah, a little bit.
Wow, novelization. Because obviously we don't have a DVD case to read it off of.
That's how the publishers wanted it too.
Oh, that's true. So I really enjoyed this story.
I did too. I liked it a lot.
I was really curious to hear your take on it, being the resident Cyberman fanatic.
And the final Cyberman story so far.
For you.
For me.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I think this was like third or fourth.
my brain had to start going through the chronology before I went, whoa. No, not that's not what he meant. Okay.
For me. It's
I'm pretty sure the one we saw just recently was
Series 10
the last one. Yeah.
My last
Your last
Cyberman
one.
story.
Had you read the book before you read it recently?
No.
Okay.
So this was my first time reading the book, and then, of course, watching it.
Ditto.
There wasn't much I didn't like about the story, really. I mean, it's... The Cybermen are kind of up to the normal Cybermen aspect stuff. It's kind of a weird meld of the moon base and the invasion, because you got the cyber controller off in the distance and the Cybermen trying to find their way on, with the added aspect of Cybermats. Of course, Second Doctor is my new classic Doctor, so that adds volumes to the story for me. Jamie is, as always, fantastic. I think Zoe is my favorite female companion for the Second Doctor, so there's all these things that are stacked in its favor to begin with. And just the era that the show is made at this time is just so enjoyable to me, no matter what's truly happening, that I just have so much fun watching it. Even the smaller stuff that normally would bother me in other eras don't bother me in this. it's while it's 6 parts, it doesn't feel stretched out to me, but it doesn't feel like it moves too quickly either. It feels like it moves at a steady pace that kind of takes its time to develop where things are going and develop the wheel characters. And I really like the fact that it takes pretty much a whole episode to actually get to the wheel. It's the Doctor and Jamie alone on this rocket trying to figure out what's going on with this servo robot. I really like the fact that it just takes its time getting to where it wants to go.
I was a little worried getting into it. I read the book before I went into the TV show, and it's funny because the book's written in such a way that you can really feel the beats of, okay, that's the cliffhanger, that's the end of that episode. Okay, here comes that's going to be the end of. And so I was looking forward to watching it and seeing if I was right, based on where these hit. But initially it was like, oh, this is we've got a whole episode where we're just on the rocket ship and nothing's happening. Oh, there's a whole episode of this where there's just nothing going, and the Doctor's unconscious. He must have been on holiday. But realistically, it's interesting what you said, because the pacing of it's very measured.
Oh, yeah.
And it ramps up to that crescendo at the end. It does a really good job of that. And then once you get into the actual plot of the Cybermen and what they're attempting to accomplish, when you find out that they're behind all this, everything kind of comes back to the rocket.
And how, yeah.
It's not just a conveyance from getting us, getting onto the space station and kind of dealing with that. This is not one of those that you could cut 2 parts out of it and had a 4-part adventure, because you kind of need all of that stuff on the rocket in order to fulfill the eventual promise of the plan of how they were going to get on board, and how it was really well constructed in that way. And I have to, my initial thought of, oh man, this is going to be more with it. Well, it really wasn't, because it kept bringing back to it. So
yeah,
I like that a lot.
Once you kind of discover what the Cybermen, what they were planning and what they were trying to do, it feels, at least up to this point, the most complex Cybermen plot so far. Because, I mean, the 10th planet, it's Mondas is back. Oh, okay. And then Moonbase is, we're trying to get into this base so we could get to Earth. But it's not them thinking outside the box of how to do things. They just kind of go forward and go. This is the first, I feel, cunning Cybermen story.
Well, they had 6 whole phases to it.
Oh, yeah.
and a plan B.
Yeah. So, and the fact that they thought, okay, we need to do this, we got to do this, and get on the rocket, and then get the rocket over there and have this beryllium burn. That's not how they said it. But
beryllium is all I could think of.
That's how I read it.
I think they were saying beryllium, weren't they?
Beryllium,
rods. Yeah.
And so they could get onto the wheel because they couldn't get on there otherwise.
Or were they bernarium? Bernarium rods.
Bernarium
rods. I think that's
sure.
and sending the Cybermats through those bubbles so that they would eat the rods, so that they would have to go to the rocket. It's just such a well thought out plan.
And I liked the added touch that the Cybermats can be programmed if they've got a mission that they're not harmful.
Yeah,
because that would call attention to them, and they've got to complete the mission first. But then once the mission was complete, flashing eyes and people are dying, and that was cool, because that's not something I'd been exposed to really before. Usually it's Cybermat is like, ee!
You're kind of used to Revenge of the Cybermen.
Yeah, that's true too.
Up until now, though, we hadn't had hypnotizing ones, right? We didn't have that in
Moonbase.
Moonbase. We didn't have that in Tomb, and we hadn't had that.
No, this is the first time that the Cybermen have really kind of taken over other humans.
And to my knowledge, only in all of the cyber stories, I don't remember a hypnotism aspect of it.
Well, yeah.
I mean, they've had the earbuds, but
I think the closest thing, and it's not entirely the same, but the fact of the bits they put on the humans' necks to keep it from happening is kind of similar to what they do later in the invasion.
Yeah.
But that's more to knock everybody out than to actually take them over.
Yeah.
Right.
Kind of makes you wonder why they didn't keep that.
Well, they were, I guess, too easily. It's easier to invade when no one's conscious as opposed to.
I'll tell you, this is what I do with the Cybermen is I don't think that the Cybermen all come from. I don't think their evolution is a natural. Well, this didn't work, so we do this. This didn't work. I think they all sort of come from different foundations of Cybermen. I mean, obviously, the Series 10 finale kind of helped with this because we had the Cybermen still on Mondos that went to Earth and were going to take over Earth from Mondos, but we also had this group of Mondasian Cybermen on this ship also that was there. So I kind of get the impression that Mondas was the foundation of the Cybermen, and out from there they kind of spread. And then I think as each different, I don't want to say faction, but each different group evolved, they evolve in a different way, because when we come across the Cybermen, with the exception of rebooting the Cybermen for a different universe and starting their story over in Army of Steel, Rise of the Cybermen, Army of Steel, or
Age of Steel.
We never get these were actually from Mondos. These were actually, every time that we're reintroduced to the Cybermen, we don't go through this whole backstory of going all the way back to Mondos. So I always get the impression that the reason why it kind of normalizes, I think, in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. But I think the reason why we have Cybermen with different abilities and different styles and looks is because of the direction that particular group of Cybermen evolved in the cybernetic process. And I think, to me, that always works with, well, no, they didn't continue to keep changing to the, because by the invasion, we've got a whole nother evolution of Cybermen that are completely different than what we just see here. And I think the next step, right, I'm not mistaken, the next time we see the Cybermen in linearly is the invasion, correct? Yes. So I think that I always like to think that these are all really kind of different evolutions of Cybermen from that point that we got to.
That's also true too.
The line Rory has in A Good Man Goes to War helps kind of lend to that too, because he talks about the nth cyber legion, where there could be other cyber legions out there doing other things and kind of evolving in their direction too. So you can kind of glean that from several different instances, not just the season finale.
It's also true that the Cybermen have never really been presented chronologically, I don't feel, in Doctor Who, because when you look at Tomb, which is such an early entry, and yet it's set so far in the future that the Cyber Menace is all but forgotten.
Well, yeah.
That people don't hardly even remember that these used to be marauding bands of Cybermen roaming the galaxy.
The cyber wars are over.
And so that now that they're in Tomb, and yet that's so early in the run, and it kind of feels like every iteration that we get past that is maybe still a ragtag band that's out there somewhere
although
that turns
this one
up.
in theory should take place long before all of that ever
right
happened.
So this very easily could be more,
this feels more like it was, as great as Tomb is, this feels like a sequel to the moon base, where they tried to invade Earth and want its resources, so they goes to the moon and tries to take over the base. It fails, so this is the next step in the plan of, okay, we go to this wheel and move forward, as opposed to this whatever one-off Tomb was.
I would agree
and
with
then
that.
Eventually they succeed with the invasion. Tomb is kind of an anomaly, I think, in the Cybermen storytelling, at least of this era.
It would be interesting almost to try and put them in some sort of chronological order for the cyber timeline. Just to
Attack of the Cybermen make things really complicated.
Yeah. There's always got to be that one. That
Trust me,
that
I've thought
motivation
about
there.
this.
So you were saying that you could feel the beats in the book where the cliffhangers were. I disagree. There was maybe only one or two, for me, there was only one or two places where I really felt like, okay, that probably is where the cliffhanger is. For me, when I read the book and I finished it, I kept thinking, how are they going to make this 6 parts? This book just clips right along. I could see 4 parts maybe, but 5 parts or 6 parts for this, I just couldn't figure out how they were going to do it. And then seeing it and then thinking back to the book, I kept thinking, I don't think I even expected an entire first episode to be all Jamie and the Doctor trying to get to the ship. I didn't even think that. I mean, that clipped along so fast for me in the book. I felt like that was maybe going to be the first 15 minutes of an episode, maybe 20. I thought we'd already be on the ship by the time, or the wheel by the time we got to the end of the first episode. So I was quite surprised by that.
Well, 20 minutes would be an episode.
I think the other thing that I find interesting is Chrissy brought up the fact that, she read the novel and then she kind of wondered what they did for the books are obviously more nuanced and they have broader explanations for things and things that they can't get everything, and that's quite frequent. But what I find sometimes, especially with these novelizations, is I will read the book and then I'll watch the episode and not notice what was more detailed in the book. I often don't. And it was the same case with this one. But I think the difference for me is, I think particularly with when I read a book first, at least with Doctor Who, if I read a book first and then I watch the episode, I think my brain fills in maybe the things that the details.
My brain does the same thing.
And so I don't notice them when I'm watching the series, especially when you're, have your attention diverted by words on a screen, because this obviously 4 parts of this were reconstruction. And so I don't notice them. So I actually kind of wonder if maybe I'm doing myself a disservice by reading the book first and then going and seeing the episode, because I think maybe I would, because I get everything I need out of the novel, and then when I go to the TV televised version of it, then I'm not missing anything. I wonder if it would be different if I watched the episode and then went and read it, which I need to do now that, because we've kind of been reserving the novelizations of these stories to mostly the lost, missing stuff that we've got. And we do that because I think it does help us especially when we're watching a reconstruction. So I think some of the things that we've already done and reviewed, those are the ones I need to go to the novelization and see the details pointed out to me as I read it, because I think that's very interesting that it goes that way for me.
Well, I think there's definitely a lot of that. But I feel like The Wheel in Space doesn't have as many extra details to it. And I think part of that is because all the novelizations are pretty much the same length, page-wise. And when you have a longer story, some of those details don't get fleshed out as much because they don't have to hit that page number.
That's true.
So when you have 6 parts, he's not going to add the extra details as much as he would for a 4-part story.
Is Black Orchid half the size of an average Target book?
It's probably just as long, and it's got agonizing details.
Here's 10 backstories about all the party goers. No!
So the other thing that I found interesting about this is... I lost my train of thought.
Well, while you're thinking of that,
Right.
You're not wrong in the way the mind fills in all these details. But for me, that's why I love reading the book, especially with a telesnap recon, because it makes the recon so much more accessible.
Yeah, I would agree.
For my brain, because I'm okay kind of glossing over maybe some of that stuff that's not there, because I already have the details from the book. I think doing it in reverse, I don't remember now which one it was that we did, where I watched the telesnap first and then we went back to the novel, and it was just like, oh my God, it was just almost painful to try and sit through, because I don't know, my brain's wired to that. I want more flickering images than what you're giving me.
Was it Fury? Because I think we've only done this for Crusade, Fury, and this, right? Did we do it for Galaxy 4? I don't remember.
We did do it for Galaxy 4.
Okay, so we did it for Galaxy 4 as well.
But I think by that point, it had to have been one of the first ones we did, whichever one that
Crusade
one was.
would have been the first one.
Well, but I remember talking about reading the book first. Because I remember specifically in Crusade going, this is the way I'm doing it from now on. But
Yeah, I don't think
whichever one it was, I don't remember now. But I just...
Would it have been Underwater Menace?
Let's see, that one was later, I think.
Yeah.
But,
I think we did it with that, too.
Well, I mean, we did Shada, where you probably had seen Shada before you read the book.
Maybe... Yeah, maybe if
Did
we're
I say?
counting
I
that.
meant that's what I meant was Underwater. I said Fury from the Deep, but I meant Underwater Menace when I was counting the books.
But at any rate, I think especially with the recons, it's good. Now, there are a ton of them that I had read the Target novelization as a kid that I didn't know any, like Web of Fears one.
Yeah.
That I'd read the book before I ever saw the televised version, and so that came as a great disconnect almost, because there were some scenes that were just shot for shot exactly what I had imagined. All the stuff in the underground, the tunnels, and all of that was just right there. And then there were other stuff that I just didn't picture that way at all, and so it kind of took my brain a little bit to kind of discard the the old visual in favor of this is what you had actually read. The War Games is another one that is vastly different from what I read, especially when they get to the outside the games itself, when they're in the kind of the control room and the alien planetoid stuff. That was just a completely different visual for me. But
one of the things I'm discovering, and I think it's especially with base under siege type stories, is when I read the novelization and then I watch the televised version. The televised version, it really gives a sense of claustrophobia. I know how claustrophobic these sets are because when I read this book, I had just not like a huge, giant, massive, Death Star style space station, but I had a larger, maybe 2001 size space station kind of thing. I had a bigger scope of what the space station might look like, and you don't really kind of put in perspective the claustrophobia that it feels like, the claustrophobic sets that they put together when you watch it. So that was much smaller and much more narrow.
Especially once inside the magnificent spaceship, they're bewildered by its complexity and sheer size.
Well, they are in the novelization.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Look at the size of that one, Doctor.
Yeah.
Yes, Jamie, it is a big one, isn't it?
One thing that I didn't glean from the novel or at least I didn't visualize it this way, was when the Cybermen first actually appear.
Yeah,
I did not imagine them in the giant bubbles too.
Yeah, I thought they just came out of a box.
So did I, and I don't know if that was just me doing the standard Cyberman thing in my head.
Well,
the
it
bubbles
mentioned
were...
that they punched through, and because I remember thinking, that's kind of the same thing.
But see, I sort of felt that they were in a box in the cellophane that we usually see them in, those type, those cocoons, and that's what they were punching through, which made sense to me. Now, the bubble visualization for the Cybermats going over to the ship from the rocket, in fact, it's interesting that even in the telesnap version, seeing that going, okay, that's kind of how I imagined it as I was reading the book as well.
I really, really enjoyed, because as different as it was, the way that, I forget the actual wording of the passage, but Terrence Stick says something to the effect of, like an embryo. And I just got cold chills visualizing this cyber egg, for lack of a better term. And it's just, it's almost H.R. Geiger worthy of kind of the horror that...
Well, that's kind of how it was in the televised episode. Yeah, I agree.
So that part was really cool.
Yeah.
I just really liked all the characters too. The supporting cast I really enjoyed.
Yeah, there wasn't really anybody to root against. They were all kind of likable people, and as the Ten Little Indians part started and the first death happened, it was like, oh no, not that guy, because you get kind of grown a little attached to all these people.
I'm started getting tired of, and it's not, I think it's just more in the way that we've been doing this and not to the fault of the series at all. But I'm getting a little tired of the captain or commander of a ship or a planet going crazy through the process of this. I mean, we've had this.
It's almost cliche.
We had it in Evil of the Daleks. So he wasn't the captain, but he was a main guy that just went insane. We had that more recently with something else. Yeah, 10th Planet. I mean, we've just. I don't know. I think because we've had this all kind of bottled up together. But
bases of these, the commanders of the bases in these type of stories. I mean, Ice Warriors, the commander there is kind of the same way. He doesn't.
But we hadn't
crazy.
done that one recently. I feel like there was a chunk here just recently with, and by that I mean like the last 6 to 8 months that I mean, even Underwater Menace, we had the guy was mad anyway, but it just progressively becomes more and more mad. Tobias Vaughn does the same thing in The Invasion, but we haven't done that in a while either. So I don't know. It's just
fits to the era.
It's one of those things that maybe that's what it is. It's just when you got a base under siege, that's the way you're going to go with it. But
that's how you add extra drama.
I suppose this guy went completely like in a box though. He went from being this like in control kind of guy to gonna deal with it, not gonna deal with it.
Well, and
like okay, that's different.
When it first started happening, I thought, oh, he's under cyber control.
That's what I thought too.
And the fact that he actually wasn't, wow, that really impressed me.
And I don't know if that was the red herring that we were supposed to believe or not. I don't know if it was intentionally set up to be a misdirect that, you think he's under cyber control, only to find out that he's crazy, or if it's just part of the trope that the base commander tends to go crazy in these kind of stories.
If it was supposed to be a red herring, I missed it because I didn't see it. I thought the guy was literally just folding because things weren't going the right way.
The novel definitely puts it that way more.
Yeah, he was just a control. I mean, he's a guy that he's a routine guy, and when things get outside the routine, he had no way to handle it. He had no idea how to handle it.
I did question a little bit about so we went over to the ship and we find these two guys and we bring them back and we nurse them back to health, and the first thing is, well, let's take them on a tour and show them the power grid to the laser beam, and it's like, where's the interrogation? Not that I necessarily need that, but shouldn't there have been somebody going, so how did you get on the rocket? Why are you here? Keep him under surveillance. Don't show him the laser beam.
Yeah, you know? I don't know, because I apply that to like modern stories, but like maybe I'm used to that with Doctor Who. Is you just got a little more free reign when you show up somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, and I can't remember what exactly Joey did. Joey.
Zoe?
Jamie did.
Oh. Are you shipping Zoe and Jamie?
Well, I always pictured him and Victoria, but whatever.
No. Here, since you brought that up, let's go this route, because I've always kind of felt that there was a different dynamic between Jamie and Zoe, and than there was with Jamie and Victoria.
Oh,
and the interesting thing about it is, I never could really put my finger on it, but it wasn't until this episode, and there was almost a little bit of a school boy and girl teasing, almost like romance thing, like flirting, teasing. You know how young kids kind of flirt and tease at the same time.
Yeah,
especially boys. They tease girls that they're flirting. They think it's flirting, and it's really not. But that's kind of how they do it. There was that here, and then it clicked on me. I was like, Jamie and Victoria were always a big brother, little sister relationship. Zoe and Jamie, I think he really had a thing for Zoe. I think he really did. I think that spark is laid here, and then now suddenly my mind just went, oh, that totally explains that relationship, how they were together. He always seemed very protective with Victoria in a big brotherly type way. He's always been very protective of Zoe in more of a jealous type way. And the fact that he's jealous of somebody else, it's less brotherly and more, romantic sense. So
I hadn't necessarily seen it more brotherly before, but now that you mention it, yeah,
I've always felt he was more brotherly with Victoria, and I've always kind of wondered if there wasn't a little bit, because he and Zoe have that kind of almost healthy one-upsmanship.
They almost have more best friend aspect to me than a shipping
maybe.
aspect.
But in this one especially, where you can see that, right off the bat, that's where this came from. That this isn't a long-standing thing. That this is and having just come back off the Crotons and the teaching machine, and she says something about, well, you wouldn't have been any good to him. Just But I was kind of shocked. And again, it's a different era, it's a different time that these things were written. But when he first meeting, she makes a comment and he says, "Oh, yeah, about the kilt," and he's like, "Oh, I'll take you over my knee," and I'm like, "Wow, are you allowed to even insinuate that?"
Back then.
Well, then she says, "That sounds like it's going to be fun." That's what she says.
Yeah. I don't think Jamie was ready for a modern woman of the future. I really don't. So, first appearance of Zoe, which I kind of sort of intellectually knew that, but I don't think I really... It wasn't until I picked up the book in earnest and started reading it, because you'd even given it to me, 3 weeks ago?
Oh, yeah.
And didn't even register there were Cybermen on the cover. Really, when you gave it to me. So it wasn't until I started reading it, and then I stopped and I looked at it and I went, "Oh, this is a Cyberman story." Okay, I know what I'm in for. And then I read a little bit further, and I flipped it over and I looked at it and went, the wheel, and said, "Oh, this is where Zoe's from." Okay, when does she show up? So it just, I don't know why, my brain was just not firing at all. And so I was putting all those details together. And in my head, this is kind of exactly how Zoe comes into it. Because I've never seen this one before at all. But yet, I had no idea that she was a stowaway.
Oh, yeah, I didn't either.
Or yet another in a long line of stowaways.
Oh,
apparently.
I think you meant on the wheel. You mean in the TARDIS? Well,
I mean both.
She isn't.
I didn't realize. Well, yeah,
I do like how the book
attempts
does it
to stow away.
She attempts to stow away. She's very bad at it.
I really like the growth she has throughout this entire story of how she's very logic and data and information, and really wants and is striving to become more than that, and sees the Doctor and Jamie as a way to be that way.
Yeah.
I really like that.
I did too.
and how she's questioning. Well, he says I'm more machine than human, and her entire growth is fantastic.
And then my heart broke when we got to episode 6 and they're getting ready, and Jamie says, "Oh, don't worry, Zoe, we won't forget you." And I went, "'Cause you will."
That's true.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
Wow.
Tiny little pieces right here just crumble.
I think this gives her, from the perspective of knowing the Jamie and Doctor and Zoe stories that we've seen and that we're familiar with. I think it was more in perspective of her analytical, logical mind, too. I think that without this story, that seems kind of weird and cold to me. Now seeing this story and reading this story, that completely fixes all of that. Any sort of weird, gosh, she's just really kind of, not even heartless. I never really felt she was heartless, but she didn't really feel like she was as warm and compassionate as other female companions were. And I kind of...
She was just very practical.
That's just it. And I always kind of figured it's because she has more of an analytic mind, but now having some basis for why she has an analytic mind like that. I mean, the doctor basically said, the psychiatrist, I can't remember her name, Gemma says to her, you were brainwashed. You're one of the few people that wasn't exactly brainwashed, because it's addressed that that she's just very uncaring, and it's not that she's uncaring, but that's the impression that she gives to at least two people in situations. And so it by addressing that, I thought, okay, that completely makes her character. I mean, it makes you want to go back and watch all of Doctor Who in order and go, okay, this really explores this character a lot better. But
and Zoe gets the benefit over most companions of the classic series that those character traits actually continue for her, and she grows more. I mean, she gets to continue to show that analytical brain throughout her run of the show, as opposed to forgetting it 2 episodes later. Yeah. Or the very next episode.
True.
Especially in The Invasion and, some of the other ones down the line.
The Crotons.
She's directly responsible for,
Yeah.
computing something that's going to save the day.
Yeah.
And doing it so much better than Adric.
Dominators, I think, even.
We finally got you to have some sympathy for Adric, and then suddenly you're backing off again. We need to get him some more Adric, I suppose. He's deprogramming.
Yeah.
Been brainwashed.
Anything else about this story you guys want to chat about?
My one small complaint, and it's a really small one, and I don't...
K9 wasn't in the book.
No. That would have been amazing.
Then it would be perfect.
As far as the actual TV version, I didn't like the actual Cybermen voices. And it took me a while to think about this. And so, obviously the Cybermen talk in the 10th planet. They don't actually talk in the moon base, do they? They're just a non-speaking, ominous threat.
I can't remember well enough, but I think you might be right.
And then the only one that doesn't speak, and the only one that speaks in Tomb is the cyber leader.
Cyber controller, or cyber leader, yeah.
Or cyber controller, whichever it is. And so that voice for the cyber leader here, or controller, was in line, but the actual Cybermen, I did not like their voices. That's my big complaint with the story.
Well, it must have been a great story then, if that's your biggest complaint.
and that's a Cyberman fanatic being like, oh, that voice isn't quite right.
Headcaning that goes back to what Glenn said.
Yeah,
it's just out of sequence.
Just could have been better
not to
voices.
mention, I mean, you put up with it through most of the 80s too. I mean,
but
late 70s,
that's
early
like
80s.
I guess
the 80s make all the difference though, because you've got David Banks. When David Banks goes, excellent, it's like.
See, I guess when I think of the Cybermen from this era, I hear the leader's voice, and when I hear the other voices, it's just jarring to me.
Oh, okay.
More than anything, because it has that such iconic voice of "You shall become like us."
I was more grateful for the Cybermen voices because I could understand them. The cyber controller, I could barely.
See,
understand.
I almost had the reverse.
Really.
I just like the fact that they don't all sound like Daleks.
Yeah. They don't all have the same voice.
Well, yeah, just in a way that helps.
It does help a little bit.
Idea that these were people once upon a time is that maybe that little piece of their, humanity or whatever. Unlike
that is an inconsistency that I can't be bothered by. Sorry, Keith.
Well,
I know as a Cyberman fan, that's why.
More than it was. More than it,
if this
by the end of the story, I was all right with it. It was just so jarring at first. I was like, "That's not
if
a
this had
Cyberman
been
voice.
like,
What are they doing?"
If this would have been like, I think it was Planet of the Daleks. I think if you watched the non-special edition version, the Daleks sound horrid. I mean, it's completely changed and completely
it's kind
different.
of like some
If
of
it had
those.
been that, like Daleks where it sounded like this, and they sound like this, and they sound like this, and they sound like this, all consistently, and then suddenly you throw it in there and go, oh my gosh, that is not a Dalek, and then we return to the consistency of the Daleks. That bothers me.
It's like when K9
there's very little
gets laryngitis.
Yeah. There's very little consistency in the Cybermen
it wasn't
side.
until I really
can't bother
sat down to start thinking about it that the fact that we really don't have them talking that much after 10th Planet until we get the Cyber Leader again. So it was
maybe that's it. Maybe
it was just a jarring thing that it was like whoa, that didn't sound right.
Maybe because I placed that into my whole headcanon of how they all kind of evolved from different groups. Maybe
I was very pleased to.
They also look remarkably different later too. Not much later either.
Yeah.
So.
The bit on the rocket with the robot reading it's just, and the robot does this. Okay, and then seeing the telesnap of the robot and sitting up and going, oh, that's a servo robot. Because I have the Doctor Who technical manual at home that showed me pictures of this robot, which I've never seen on screen before. And was like, oh,
that's
this
funny.
Is where that's from.
But see, I think I knew that's what that was from. And I thought I was kind of in the same boat as you, but it was when I was reading the book and they said servo robot in there. I went,
I see, that's just
I bet this is, see, to me, I didn't make that leap at all. I immediately did that leap to the technical manual and went, okay, that's that robot. And then from that point on, I could visualize it all the way through. And then actually it took a step in evolution in my mind when I saw it, because I thought, this even looks cooler than it did in the technical manual. Because, that was line drawings in the technical manual, and they always broke it down into blueprint type stuff. But yeah, I actually thought it was really kind of a cool looking robot.
It was a really cool looking robot. And again, coming on the Tales of Our Friday Night Who, which was the the Crotons.
Which are not cool looking.
Which are not cool looking robots. And you want to talk.
Don't have good voices either.
Well, you want to talk voices, man. When that one's going, his accent is so atrocious. And he's like, we're going to go and do the thing. But he's trying to be mechanical. I was having a hard time keeping a straight face during most of the Crotons.
They were South African robots.
Oh, they were something, all right.
So we haven't really touched on the reconstruction that Britbox did.
Yeah.
I thought they did a really good job.
I think they did too. It is very much in line with loose cannon style of reconstructions. I could tell there were scenes that were used, in episode 3 that had been utilized from episode 1.
Yeah.
And I'm perfectly fine with that because it doesn't adhere to the BBC's way of doing it, where they did this a little bit with Web of Fear, the one particular episode that they reconstructed that way. And then terribly bad with Underwater Menace, where they just chronologically put them together, and sometimes people were talking that weren't talking, and it was in an odd place. That didn't work. By using the telesnaps almost as religiously as the portrayal on the screen is better for me to be able to flip. Even if I'm seeing a clip from somewhere else, it still helps visually knowing who's talking, where we're at in the scene. There are a lot of scenes where there's a lot of blur because the snap was on, and I was even fine with that.
I didn't have any issue.
And I didn't feel like they had to step away from the action much to grab from somewhere else. But occasionally they noticeably did it, but I preferred that. And so I think loose cannon, and I haven't had a lot of experience with others, but loose cannon's always been a favorite of mine as far as the reconstructions. So I was very pleased that they worked with loose cannon on this one to put this together.
I agree. I think it was one that was really well put together, and there were a couple of times when I felt it was odd that we had the subtitling up at the bottom about the Doctor crosses and opens a cabinet and blah blah, and I went, well, why would you need that? That was pretty. Oh yeah, I read the book. I know what he's doing.
Yeah.
So I had to keep pulling myself back from that and putting it. Yeah, okay, that's a needed bit of stage direction there. But overall, I thought it was really well done.
There is one mistake in the last episode, I believe it is. We get a description at the bottom that says Bill raises the wrench and brings it down on the control panel
And is electrocuted.
long before it happens, and then it comes up again.
Oh.
Where I think they must have accidentally slipped it into the wrong place because Bill hasn't even come into the room yet, and that pops up there. And I thought,
I missed that then.
Did this happen then? Like,
missed that
did this
too,
happen
then.
in the background? Because I knew it happened in the book.
Yeah.
But I said, did this happen in the background when they were doing this, and that's why that comes up there? And it's not up a long time. It happens really quick. In fact, it was hard for me to read it because it almost came and went so fast. Because there's dialogue, and they don't often put it up there when there's dialogue. And there was dialogue as they were doing it too. And it's when the doctor's still talking on the computer screen, and it was. No, it wasn't. He wasn't on the computer screen at that time. I think it was when Zoe and Jamie and Flanagan had come back in. Anyway, it happens, and then it happened later. And when I saw the same information text, I went, "Oh, that was a mistake there. That shouldn't have been there." This is where Bill actually smashes the control panel.
But I wonder, too, if it's actually different, because in the book, he smashes the control panel. Somebody tries to tackle him, he throws him off, and then somebody else shoots him.
Yeah, there is more
And,
to
and,
it.
and he dies, versus Bill is electrocuted. So now I'm kind of curious to know which one is authentic. You know
I
what I
would
mean?
imagine they would go off the scripts more.
That's kind of what I'm wondering. Is,
Reconstruction.
did they decide maybe that in the shooting of it that, well, that's kind of a little harsh and we don't want to portray any of these people
I
as
see what you're
bad?
saying.
So they changed it to electrocuted, and Terrence Dix went back to the script version and said, no, he gets shot.
I would suspect that Terrence probably embellished it a little bit more for there to
that's
be
what I
more
would assume,
action
too.
there.
Yeah. I was just curious.
I'm just presuming that, but I would assume that it was Terrence just giving a little more detail there.
So I don't know if it was the way I watched it, or it could be a combination. It could be a combination of the way I watched it, the story, and the way the reconstruction was done. But I thoroughly enjoyed the reconstruction of this.
I did too.
Did you sit and do it all in one chunk?
No,
Or
I
did
broke
you
it up for a different episode every day, except for one day I watched 2 back to back.
Did you do
I watched
it
them all
all?
together today. Yeah, I watched them this morning.
I did all mine today.
I really liked it being spread out. I think that really helped, at least for me, not having so much to, I don't want to say slog through because it's never slogging when it's Doctor Who, but it's so much to try to
It
handle
can be when it's a
with it's just telesnaps.
Yeah.
Splitting those up so it's 30 minutes of, okay, there's just pictures and audio and that's all, and then going on and doing other things, I think really helped me
Well, and I think
enjoy
it's
it more too.
It's a testament to the story of this one that Billy stuck with it. He watched the whole thing with me, and he hadn't read the book, so he didn't know it was coming. In fact, he was so into it that even after we had discussed that there are 2 live-action segments, and I went and looked, and I said, oh, it's 3 and 6, and he says, okay. And we got through with episode 3, and then episode 4 started with live action. And then cut to the telesnaps in the middle. Oh. And I looked at him and I went, well, you know what's the last one? I said, but what was that? I was like, well, that was the recap, but they already had that. And he goes, oh, yeah. But just the fact that he was into it to that level.
I don't remember any of them not being.
Do you just mean when it went back to telesnaps?
Yes.
Okay, because the entire episode 1, 2, was it the third one that was
Third one was live.
live action?
Yeah.
Okay, so the all of 1, all of 2 were telesnaps, the entire thing.
And no recap
No
that I
recap.
remember.
Well, no, they
don't
recapped
really-
in both of them, and then
Did they?
Yeah, and with telesnaps from 2 because that was telesnaps. In the third one, it was live, but they had started the episode, and the recap was then, which that was another thing. I kind of questioned that. I thought, well, if you've got the animated part and it's an exact recap, or animated live action part, it's an exact recap. Why wouldn't you just take that little section from the moving pictures one and stick it in the end of the one? But I could see where maybe that would be jarring enough that it made more sense to keep this whole. But the entire, there's no place where it goes without a credits break. There's no place where it goes from telesnaps right into animation.
Or live action?
Live action.
Or live action.
No,
Keep
but
saying
in
that.
episode 4, it starts with live action because it's the end of the third part, which is live action, and then goes to telesnaps
No,
at the
it
very
starts
beginning.
with telescaps at the beginning, which is I thought was interesting that 3
You had
ends
the
with
bits.
live action, or with live action with moving telegram with moving pictures, and then 4 started with non-moving
I'm
pictures.
convinced that it didn't. Maybe
The only thing that's different is the open of every one of them had moving image for
right, because it's the
doctor.
title.
Yeah, the
And
title
maybe that's what he was referring to, but I
it
thought
could
for sure
be.
it had.
No, they were, because I was, again, it made me think back each time. Well, they could have just taken that little piece of the live action and put it at the end of this one or at the beginning of the next one. Yeah, there was at no point that did they switch back and forth.
Okay. I thought they didn't, but yeah, the fact that Billy stuck with it, I think, is a testament to the fact that this is a good story. Because normally, Billy will watch Classic Who. He doesn't have a problem with that. But Telesnap Classic Who, he's not.
Yeah.
He's not a fan.
Not everyone can do it.
As much as I like the Telesnap reconstruction of this one, it is kind of a relief when you get to that third episode and you go,
and that could be part of it too, is the fact that you get to about halfway and you get a live action or a moving picture episode, and then you do 2 more telesnaps, and then you get a moving picture.
You're rewarded for that.
Yeah, a little bit.
I think that helps with the pacing, maybe a little bit
That
too.
could
with
be
this
also,
one.
yeah.
I hope that this is an indicator that there are going to be more of these available on Britbox.
I hope so too.
I took advantage of the free trial for this week to get to be able to see this one, and just kind of poking around on Britbox. It's very cool. At this point, it's not something that I would subscribe to and actually pay for.
When you have such a big DVD collection
But
like you have.
that's part of the problem, is that at least when it comes to the Doctor Who, I'm down to 8 episodes that I don't own. I've got everything else that's available. So
you have stuff that's not even on Britbox.
Yeah, but Britbox now has stuff that,
Now that's one story that you don't have.
So now if they're going to continue to put recons up there, these other things, if that's going to be a thing moving forward, it's like, okay, that may actually be, at least from being able to see it standpoint, that may be a contender to get me to subscribe to it.
And it's really $6.99 a month isn't bad.
Yeah, $7 is really manageable right now.
Yeah.
All right, anything else? Let's talk about what we have left on the schedule.
The schedule for next week, our Friday Night Who selection is Frontios with the 5th Doctor and Turlough, which we had done relatively recently, but it turns out that there's a reason that we need to go back and revisit Frontios. So once again,
there is a very strong reason.
Oh, have you got to that already? Mm-hmm. Okay. So at, again, 10:30 Friday night, please join us for that. And you can follow along on Twitter, and the hashtags are hashtag Friday Night Who and hashtag Frontios. And if you're so inclined, hashtag Doctor Who. Our show next week is a companion archive, which we've not done in a while. In a little bit of an offshoot way, because we're dealing with a companion that's kind of only a companion in some people's minds, and she's a force of nature in others. We're going to be talking about Iris Wildtime. And the 2 Big Finish audios that we've chosen for this companion archive are Excellus Dawns and The Warmery, which I believe is number 49 or
51, I believe.
Somewhere in the first half ish of the main range. And so we'll be discussing those on the podcast next week. The following week, our Friday Night Who selection is Unearthly Child, to celebrate William Russell, which was going to be William Russell and Caroline Ford. Caroline Ford, unfortunately, is out as well. So we'll still celebrate with William Russell. And of course, we may or may not be able to actively partake in that, just depending on what the con schedule and our requirements and obligations are. But then the reason we're doing that is for Time at E3 down in Wichita. Again, surely you want to come to this thing because it's so cool. Don't just take my word for it. You should be there. But go check out their website and see, everything they've got planned. And of course, we'll be there, which is an added bonus to any event. We are available for birthday parties as well, so contact us through the website for that.
All right. Anything else we need to talk about this week before we close this show?
I don't think so.
All right. That's going to do it for this week. Until next week, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
No, I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.